I want to show you some of the ways rivers change through time. And in this case, what we're going to look at is how a single river bend in a meandering river changes over the years. And so what we have on the screen here is a map looking down on a river bend. And we're going to imagine that the water's flowing around the bend from left to right. So we'll put a little arrow here indicating the flow direction. And as the water comes around a curved channel segment like this, the water going this greater distance along the outside bank has to travel at a higher flow velocity compared to the water along the inside bank. Right? It can take a more leisurely course through there. So we're going to indicate that along the inside bank of the bend, we get slower flow velocities or low velocity flow, and we get higher flow velocities along the outside. These higher flow velocities along the outside bank are going to lead to erosion. Right? The more powerful flow can erode more sediment, and that's going to cut this outside bank back as time goes on. The outside bank in a bend is often referred to as the cut bank because of the erosion that takes place along it. Where we have the lower flow velocities, we can get sediment deposition. And the sediment deposition there is going to form a bar, maybe a sand bar or a sand and gravel bar. The term for a bar that forms from deposition along the inside of a river bend is point bar. That's what we call that. Most of the deposition and most of the erosion occur when there is a lot of water in the river during high flow conditions. So during each high flow condition, we get deposition on the point bar and erosion on the cut bank. It's going to cut that bank back here. And depending on the characteristics of the river, you might have those high flow conditions once or twice a year or once every 2 years or so. But that's going to cause the bend to shift laterally, lateral to the down valley direction, in other words, shift laterally like this as time goes on. And we call that lateral migration of the bend. This deposition that's going on the point bar, it's actually forming new floodplain for this river along the inside of this river bend. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to show you what the deposits are going to look like that form over time as a result of the deposition on the point bar. In other words, I want to show what the point bar deposits look like. So what I'm doing here is I'm just erasing this stuff, cleaning this up a little bit, and then we're going to draw a profile going across the river bend. Okay, so let's fix up the outside bank there, fix up that cut bank, and now our inside bank's along here. So let's draw a cross section going across the channel from A to B. Maybe I can squeeze it in down here. Okay, so here's point A. We're up on the floodplain, and then we're going toward the channel, toward B, point A, and now we're getting to the edge of the water, and that point bar, part of it's underwater, and it slopes very gently, toward the outside bank. Okay, and then the cut bank, on the other hand, on the other side of the channel, it's steep, comes up to the floodplain on the other side, so our point B is over here on the other side of the river, and the water, when the water's high, might be up here, something like that, the water surface in the channel. So the idea is that we have deep water out here along the cut bank and high flow velocities. That's going to mean a lot of erosion at the base of the cut bank, and only the coarsest sediment can be deposited there when you have that high velocity flow in that deep water. Going up the surface of the point bar toward the inside bank, the flow velocity is going to be decreasing, and that means we're going to get finer and finer grained sediment. Maybe less gravel and more sand, and in the really shallow water maybe really fine sand. And out on the floodplain, when the water gets out there during the flood, we can deposit some mud out there. Put some dashes in out here for mud. Really fine sediment. As time goes on, erosion's going to cut into that cut bank. And it's going to form this irregular surface, this erosion surface along the bottom. So I'm going to get my eraser out again. Going to have a bunch of time go by when we erode away a lot of the cut bank. And, excuse me, at the same time, sediment's going to be depositing on the point bar. So the point bar is going to build out. That's all going to go on as time goes on. Okay, I'll get the channel over here now. Okay, at the bottom of each of these point bar deposits, we're going to have coarser grained sediments that formed in the deeper water next to the cut bank, and within each of these inclined beds of the point bar, we're going to get the grain sizes decreasing up toward the top. And, you know, eventually this is all part of the floodplain and only gets deposition during floods and might be muddy material. So when you look at these point bar deposits, they have very characteristic features. An erosion surface that runs along the bottom of the deposit. Inclined beds internally. And the tilt or inclination of the beds is not nearly as steep as what I drew here. We have that inclined bed geometry. And the grain size of the deposits themselves, the grain size fines upward. Gets finer grained as you go up through the deposit. Okay, so in the learning module I'll show you a picture of an ancient point bar deposit that shows these characteristics.